Basketball.
It's time to strap in and get ready. The Insight NBA team is in the arena, bringing you the ultimate play-by-play on who's hot and who's not to help you win your leagues and dominate your mates. You're now hooping with your hosts, Matty G, Skitty, and Mally for the Insight NBA show.
Oh, we have so many tabs open for this show. Welcome, everyone, to the Insight NBA show. Joining me, special guest, all the way over. I'm not coughing because I'm saying the word Boston at all, because you are the defending champions, hometown hero, and legend, Alex Rikleen. You can find him on all the things. Plug what you do, Alex, for those of you who haven't heard your dulcet tones before.
I'm the senior basketball writer for RotoWire. It's a very, very rigorous application process for raising my hand when the guy who had the title beforehand left. And I write for RotoWire, CBS, have a couple preseason articles out right now on Yahoo. During the season, you see me most often writing the weekly CBS waiver wire column.
Which is an absolutely fantastic column. We use waiver wire ads all over the course of the week, and once in our Insight little lift out. I think it's like, apart from ours, yours, and those waiver ads, I think it's one of the best ones. If you just Google waiver guy, like CBS NBA waivers, you see Rikleen's work through the season. And I think last year you were the number one guy for the advocate for Grayson Allen. You call it the Grayson Allen?
Indeed. Grayson
Allen.
Allen.
It wasn't the waiver wire, it was the Allen wire?
Yeah. We it often happens that someone ends up just becoming the honorary symbol for the column. A couple of years ago, it was probably Cam Johnson. Had Herb Jones for a while, and last year it was definitely Grayson Allen.
Well, I think we started off there because you just mentioned one of those darlings, and here's one of your value targets. So we've got a list today for those of you who are playing along at home. It's like a formalized top 20 of like target guys and bus guys, just people we think of people over investing picks on, or people who have slid in an ADP and in rankings. This is a universal rule. Yahoo is a beast. Fantrax is a beast. Alex, you'll agree. And ESPN is a different beast altogether when it comes to these things.
Yeah, the ADPs across all of these are different. The pre-draft rank are different. And I did a really interesting article several years ago where even about more than a month into the season, I compared roster rates across. At the time I was looking at Yahoo, CBS, and ESPN. It was before Fantrax had really become a meaningful player. And I found that there were meaningful differences across the sites, and basically the sites where you drafted, where a player had a higher ADP, people were just slower to drop those players. And you could see it in the data that if someone was off to a slow start and had a low ADP on CBS, everyone was just like, okay, easy drop, and then had a higher ADP on ESPN and they were held on.
It's because you invest that. It's because you invest in that pick. I think we invest ourselves in this. Oh, he's in the third round. His ranking is, and you might see his ranking at like 28, and you're sitting there at pick 35, and you still want it because you see this guy as a 28 ranked player, and they might be like 70, 80, and you're like, oh God, what have I done? And that gets a bit of anxiety in managers.
I mean, one of the best things you can do as a fantasy novice is just come into your draft with the rankings from anywhere else. You know, the multiple places is better. You know, more than one is better than just one. But really something that simple as coming into the draft with rankings that are different from what everyone else is, and having those and seeing what everyone else is using as well.
Well, then I think this is a promo. Well, then this is a promo for yours, because if you're not using ours, because I want to like pump up one of my favorites is the RotoWire. You can go over and check out RotoWire's active list. It has across all of like CBS, Yahoo, ESPN, Underdog, and it gives you aggregate averages. I think it's a wonderful tool for fantasy managers. I also think our Insight Big Draft Kit, because it's got my draft board, it's got Mally's draft board, it's got Matrix's draft board, and it's got Skitty's draft boards. And then we take all of our averages. We've taken our first like 168 players and we've put them all down. And I might rank it different from Mally or Matt. And then we make a consensus board for that as well. So then we find out a consensus 1 through 178, and we get the aggregate averages from all of our draft boards. You can get that now exclusively on our Patreon. The link for that is down below. But back to the guy that you mentioned as one of your value targets for a start. You did mention this guy. This is Cam Johnson is down your list in Brooklyn, but your list is, read us through your list and why these guys are for you, targets in drafts across the board.
All right. So Cam Johnson, who, you know, yeah, I had him as the last one on my list, but I'm getting a lot of honestly, Kyle Kuzma vibes from last year.
Okay.
So last year, we went into the season where the obviously tanking Wizards had a selfish, you know, ball hoggy, always going to take the shot guy who people were saying, you know, might even be a contender for the scoring title, and who was rising up the draft boards. Meanwhile, there's this other guy who's sort of a much more known commodity as just a capable NBA player who can score well, who is a little bit more established on the team and a little bit just, you know, probably just like a better player. And I'm not predicting that Cam Johnson will outscore Cam Thomas, but I am saying that I see a similar dynamic to last year where people were projecting way too big of a gap between Cam Thomas and Kyle Kuzma. And they're doing the same thing this year with Cam Thomas and Cam Johnson. And I'm, you know, when you look around the league, the difference between the top scorer on a team and the second scorer on a team is not usually as wide as what most projections, including RotoWires, has as the difference between Cam Thomas and Cam Johnson. Almost everyone has Cam Thomas as the Nets leading scorer and Cam Johnson as the second leading scorer. But I don't, most of the time, the gap isn't that big. Most of the time, the second leading scorer has more than 15 or 16 points.
I'd like to add a cherry on top of your argument. The thing that's also going in Cam Johnson's favor is that we have a bit of a darling in the world. You hear a lot of analysts, I think all of us included, are aware of the potential for Noah Clowney for the Nets. So Noah Clowney becomes the flyer guy. We know Claxton is the entrenched center, signed the contract, did whatever. So there's all of a sudden the attention and the shiny new toys or the potential upside or the potential flyer. And there's Cam Johnson. Now his average ADP across all sites right now is 127.8. The worst one is 138. He's almost free. He's moved in a little bit on Yahoo at 126.2. His worst is ESPN at 138. But for a guy who's average ADP, like you said, almost free. This is like a 10th round pick, 11th round pick.
Yeah.
I just pretty bloody good.
He's really efficient. I think the floor is pretty good. And I think that he has there's a pretty easy to see path for him getting into the top 70 or 80. Top 60 is probably not happening, but the path seems pretty straightforward there. Also has an injury bump from last year. Didn't play a lot of games. He's an injured guy, so he falls down. And also just, you know, people are, you mentioned like media and narratives that around, like Cam Thomas has a cell phone. Cam Thomas like knows what people are saying about him. He doesn't want his rep to be the selfish guy. Like, I'm sure he's going to take plenty of shots. Don't get me wrong. But like on some level, and maybe it's just one pass a game, but on some level, it's going to seep into his head.
It seeped into his head towards the end of last season. He started becoming more of a distributor. He's scoring. He was the highest. I did a projection last year on one of the shows. He was the highest of the leading scorers in the NBA at one point, in the top 5, with the least amount of 3 points taken, before he moved out to become more of a 3-point shooter and distribute the ball a little bit. So he actually changed his game up a little bit. So he does hear that narrative. You've also got some other interesting targets on here, like new guys, and like, so you've got, let's cover all of the punt free throw bigs with the asterisks on, not Capella, because I'm not going to take. I'm not going to.
Capella's fairly valued. It's not a hit on Capella. He's just, his value strikes me as fair.
Exactly.
Well, I don't want to come on here and just sing Derek Lively's praises exclusively. I feel like I'm.
Are we going to get to? Are we? Let's do your bus list straight. Let's do your bus list. Okay, how's this? Let's get through this one. Let's save that one for the end. You've got Paul George in Philadelphia and Darius Garland in Cleveland as your other key targets here. So let's talk PG and Darius, and then finish, and then we'll go into your busts, and then we'll do mine, and that way we can have it'll flow. I won't edit it, but it will sound fantastic.
All right. For Paul George, I think he's like a borderline. He's a first round, second round turn guy. He's someone who I think should be going 12th, 13th, who is often going in the third round. It's kind of that simple. Especially if the pessimistic reports on Kawhi are
Embiid.
True. No,
like where he is now, or what was happening last year?
I just brain farted. I said a thing that was completely outdated because I was trying to type his name into the search bar so I could pull up his stats page, and so I just said outdated information.
Well, I've got for him right now his average ranking across all sides, and you said he's probably a second round guy. Let's say second round guy at best, which is worst case 24 in a 12-teamer. His current ADP average is 37. In Yahoo, he's the best. He's actually fallen down in ESPN to 43.
That's ridiculous. I mean, I think he shouldn't be going outside. I don't think he should be going lower than like 15th.
Great value then.
His injury risk is, I think, pretty overstated. I mean, everyone gets hurt, and he plays. I think he's played more games recently than most of the other players we are looking at between picks 5 and 15. Most of the players in that range are very good and have missed a lot of games. And I think Paul George's games played stacks up favorably to most of them over the last.
I would agree, but I would also agree, like sometimes it's a case of the truth. So it depends on which analyst you listen to. For example, I know that Josh Lloyd at Basketball Monster has him at 12. And then I know over at #Basketball, which is another great resource to use for these, they have him at 27. So if you look at the best case versus the not even worst case, because 27 is not exactly a bad number, the truth is somewhere in the middle. And what is that? Well, that is in that second round. That is in the 18s, 19s. And if you're looking in that zone for him, that becomes, if he's falling down, like his ADP suggests, to that 27, 28 marker, that's where you get the value in the second round.
Yeah, then you can probably pass on him at 15, at 15, 16, 17, 18. You can pass on him and probably get him with your next pick, which to me is just an incredible steal. I think he's really... I think that the fears of pairing with Embiid and the fears of pairing with Maxey are overstated. I think we have enough examples over the past few years of stars pairing up where they were pretty much okay.
Kevin Durant. I think Kevin Durant in Golden State would probably be the most, the biggest equivalent, similar position. There's a point guard in place. I mean, not the center thing, but Embiid's very heavy with usage, but also a very willing passer. We do forget how much of a good playmaker that Embiid is. Great passer of the game. He loves to actually use that. He's an upgrade over Tobias Harris, and we all see what Tobias Harris could do. Yeah. And this is very good for Paul George.
Yeah. So I just think he's just going way too late. I think that fear is dropping people way too low. And I think that I wonder if I should wonder if I could do an article on this. I bet that this would probably be a decent, we could probably figure this out, but I bet this is probably something that's come up a bunch over the past few years, where when you have a star becoming the third, their ADP is dropping too far. And I bet this is a reproducible pattern. I bet that if we look back,
I think you'd be right, because we always worry about usage, we worry about minutes, but we also then have to look at the team where he's going to, because one of the other big concerns and narratives in the preseason is how high do we invest a first round pick in Joel Embiid? I know that you've been preaching from the rooftops about share the knowledge, like Embiid's a top 5 guy, him falling down to 8 or 9 is stupid. You're a fucking idiot if you basically do it. But then again, his value is then now tied intrinsically, you would argue, to Joel Embiid. So if we are preaching for, you can't believe, this is a case where you can believe two things. You can't. If you believe Embiid is going out, well, then you need to believe in not overinvest, but you need to invest in Paul George, because we saw what happened with Maxey last year. Great for a short time, but not sustainable. That release valve for Maxey is Paul George. That release valve for Embiid is Paul George. And if one of those two guys goes out, that only buoys him further. I love that. Garland is an interesting one for me. What is it about Garland that puts him on your list this year? Is it the bounce back potential from a very average last year? Like, that's what gets you there?
It's that simple. It's just a player who I like and think is good, who I think everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. It's been beaten to death. The example has been beaten to death, but I like it when my fantasy players can eat solid food. And this year he can. Unlike last year. I just, I know his game isn't necessarily, he is someone who, like, similar to, like, Ja Morant's kind of an extreme, but similar to Ja Morant, he's someone who might be a little bit better in real life than his fantasy game, because of just his strengths and weaknesses and how those play. But I also just think that he's a good player who had the worst season he possibly could have.
It was a shit show. Last year was a shit show for Garland. And I think under new management, I think in a healthy Garland, we can see a return for value. And I think we're starting to see that trend as well. So when we say value as well, we need to be conscious of where he's going on our draft boards across all tiers, because here's a guy bringing up on RotoWire. When we look down, I'm going to go up to Chicago. There's a lot of free agencies in there. I've got to get the free agents out of that list. We go up to his ADP right now, and across the websites, he is the 4th draftable guy. So his average one is 71.6. He's moved into Yahoo to 61 as the highest position. He's come down on Underdog. He's around 76 everywhere else. Fantrax is the one that he's been the most invested on, at 55. So if we're getting him in that 60-ish zone, when we know that he is a top 40, 45-ish player, that's where we receive that return on investment, Alex.
Yeah, exactly. On Fantrax, you're starting to get to sort of fair value. I'd still be willing to reach like a couple of picks on Fantrax, not a full round. But I'd definitely be able to scroll a little bit. But on other platforms, I am expecting a bit of a bounce back.
Well, I'll go to my 5 targets so we can finish with your free throw one to begin our bust list, because this is going to be great. We're fired up. We have a chat. You made me cry earlier on this one. These are my targets in order throughout the round. So I've done these through early on through to the later rounds. And I'm actually getting really friendly with my point guards this year. I think there's a lot of point guard targets, especially with all the, hey, I'm going to punt points builds that seem to be a bit of a trend right now, which is not a bad strategy. It can work. But there are guys who have fallen in value off in their ADP range currently. Kyrie Irving in Dallas. Jalen Johnson has now slipped behind all ADP data back into the 40s, where he rightfully should be, because he was overdrafted above Jalen Williams of the two Jalens in the power forward spot you want to talk about. There was this big upside trend for Johnson. And I just did a show with Josh Lloyd over on his podcast. We did the Jalens, and Jalen Johnson was seen as the upside, the second, the heir apparent to get the points and usage in Atlanta. And it was quite aggressive for a time there. But now I think it's relatively calmed down again. And then with that calm comes, again, there's your truth, there's my truth, and there's the draft truth. And the draft truth there is once he's outside of 40, that's good for you because that's a 4th round pick. And he was going at the end of the 3rd round. And if it continues to fall or the preseason's not great, maybe he does a hamstring like we're seeing in these injuries, he could fall even further. So I think he's settling into value around there. I like Jordan Poole at point guard. I like that he showed maturity towards the end of last season. I like that he has been confirmed as the point guard in Washington and that his ADP is still in the 90s. This is a guy we could see maybe a round or 2 back in advantage of. There is an improvement to come with him. Really like today. Now, I know we did a thing about the preseason hype on guys, but Jalen Suggs in the game today looked absolutely engaged in beside KCP. I had to see it. I had to see him beside KCP because of their defensive mindset. But gosh darn it, when I looked at the box score for him in 21 minutes, the 21 minutes was nice. 11 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, that steal. The percentages were dog shit, like 3 from 10 from the field I don't like, but that can come up and I'm okay with it. But what I get for him is I get some threes out of him. I get the lines, a very good free throw percentage. If I'm punting field goal percentage, he's a more attractive lure. And Keontae George, mate, I loved him last year. He has the keys to the city. He has the Keontaes to my heart. Oh, you like that one? I love Keontae.
So, I mean, I don't disagree with any of them. I really like Suggs. I don't disagree with any of them. I like George. I really like Suggs. With George, the sort of stat line that I keep harping on is he had a 5-game run early after he took over where he was averaging, I think it was 8.5, maybe 8.8 assists per game, which, really that's 5th in assists per game in the league. So he has that in him.
He's a willing passer, dude. Keontae is a really willing passer guy, Alex. I'm telling you now, Keontae George gets out there, and with a guy like Colin Sexton, especially as his shooting guard running mate, who loves to have the ball, he's like, oh, fuck it, you can have it. He gets his, but he's so willing. It's so good to see from a rookie. Like he's not into that. My ball.
Oh yeah, I think they actively coached him to pass it slightly less. But I think that he has the potential. Whatever he's gonna get, I think his floor is like 5 to 6 assists, which in the 120s or whatever, that's great. But he actually does have the ceiling of potentially getting back up to 8 assists. 100%. If things go right, if he makes a bit of a leap. So I do like him, and I love Suggs. I think Suggs is going to be a great value. He's one of the rare people who I think that the sort of the scuttlebutt, the talk about him taking on an increased role is actually kind of believable. It does fit what the roster has done. It does fit the player. There are enough pieces in place that I actually do, in this one case, believe what people are saying, that he's going to have this different role and have more responsibility.
And I think it's the same with me. Will Hardy preaches from the rafters about how good Keontae George is, how much the team loves him, and how much apparently one of the reasons that Lowry wanted to re-sign there. I know this is just all talk and bullshit, and these narratives come out. Maybe you're just being a good teammate and leaking things to the media, because we all know this is part of the game that we play. Lowry wanted to stay in Utah because of Keontae, which was, I thought was one of the...
To be clear, I was saying I believe the stuff about Suggs. I don't believe anything about.
Oh, you know?
No.
Oh, I'm
sure Keontae is a great guy. I don't.
I believe a great
guy, but I don't.
I believe everything coming out of Orlando. They are one of the organizations that put out good news.
Orlando right now.
That they do a lot of good stuff like that. But I was really curious by that, because they did really go after Keontae. Now his ADP has come up to 118 on Yahoo for Keontae George. His average though is 120. But the ESPN is the most egregious, where it's 139. Now, depending on your league, that means that is a free pick. for a possible 8 assist guy in your draft around then. So we're really into that one.
On
That's
ESPN,
huge.
Standard is 10 teams, 13 roster spots. That's literally not drafted on standard ESPN leagues.
That's like you're going to give him up, which is ridiculous. You're also pretty much doing the exact same thing on ESPN currently with Jalen Suggs. He is at 136. 10 teams, 13 spots. He's see that he's gone down. It's actually collective fantasy managers being like, fuck you, Jalen Suggs. There's other better Jalen's out there, including Jalen Green, who's like in the 40s. Like eating me alive. He's dropped in Yahoo to 99.
My Dynasty League manager sent out a graph of how many Jalen's we each have on each of our teams.
Yeah,
this is important context.
This is some very important content and context. I did literally that show I mentioned before with Lloyd over on Locked On. We ranked the Jalen's, but we were only going between 2. We gave a couple of honorable mention Jalen's. And before the show, we were just chatting, noting down. I think we came to 9. We even forgot about the other Jalen Williams that actually exist on OKC. Like they have the same name, just spelled differently. It's ridiculous.
There's another one. There's another one who's like a draft prospect in college still, I think.
There's another Jalen Williams on the way. It's just
spelled the same way as the OKC one,
we're running out of nicknames for these guys very, very quickly. Now, this comes to before. Now, we're going to tie this in back to back because your last one for targets was all of the punt free throws bigs because, again, except Capella, not because we hate Capella, but because he's at fair value. Because that ties into your, that's mine. No, your bust. That's mine. Whoops, flashed that up too early. Daniel Gafford is one of those guys who was the punt free throw, but you have him as a bust. So your bust are Jaren Jackson Jr., Isaiah Hartenstein, OG Anunoby, and Daniel Gafford. Why is Gafford not Capella because he's fair value, but why is Gafford the exception to the rule and a bust potentially in your draft right now?
Well, because he's a worse player than Derek Lively. And
say this so calmly.
And his coach told us that his coach knows that he's a worse player. Yep. Do you know how rare it is for one of these stick up their butt veteran coaches to play the rookie off the bench like twice as many minutes in the playoffs as the starting veteran?
And how rare is it that a
coach after game 2 in round 2, Lively played more than Gafford because Jason Kidd realized something correctly, which is that Derek Lively is better. He's a better player than Daniel Gafford. And so I think that Gafford is a bust because I think he's going to play less minutes. He might be the nominal starter, but I think he's going to play less minutes, and I think he will continue to cede work share through the season to the better player who is also steadily improving as the 20-year-old, or maybe he's 21 now, Derek Lively matures and, enters a bar legally for the first time. Derek Lively is great, and at the moment, Gafford is going before Lively in drafts, and that should be exactly flipped. So,
and this is where one of these insane differences. You're right on 2 things. One of them, for a coach to take off their pants and to take a poop on someone that openly is the kind of content people pay directly from OnlyFans for. It's ridiculous that it was literally like, it's like it doesn't happen that often.
For that.
It was the truth. How often does a coach actually be like, they don't just do that. They don't do that to their tenured center. They don't be like, you know what, I'm going to take a shit on this guy and then just let everybody in the media know about it quite openly. And they've done that. Now, this is where I don't think he's a bust. I hear what you're saying. I don't think he's a bust. I think what we need to be conscious of is where he is going on drafts, because the unfortunate problem is this with the Gafford and the Lively experiment. One represents the 2 dichotomies of this situation is that Gafford represents equal or lesser value to a certain extent, but it's nominal. Currently at Yahoo is at 108. He's climbed up. He used to be in the 120s. Like he used to be going down. So he's come up now to about 108.7. Lively is 108.9. It's a bee's dick between them on Yahoo. The more egregious error is that his ADP on ESPN for Gafford is at 87, and Derek Lively is a free pick at 133.
Lively should be going around 90, and Gafford should be going around 115, 120.
And so that's where on the platform it's completely flipped. And Fantrax, let's say there's no CBS data in there yet, but Fantrax is 97 for Gafford and 106. It's almost like Lively, like Gafford going off the board in Fantrax or in one of the leagues fires off an alarm bell to all the managers drafting around. They're like, oh, I wonder if Lively's taken. And they go, Lively. And they see him and they're drafting him afterwards. Being, oh, that's fine. I'll take the other guy who's better. And that's what you want to be doing in your league. You want to be conscious of that and not taking a swing too early. So I do see the Gafford not being a bust. I think it's where we invest that pick in him that he becomes a bust. If we're taking him in the 80s because we desperately need a center and we're looking at that, well, then that's a bust candidate. I think if we're taking him around that value, we can see where it goes. We can couple him, or if we're punting free throw percentage, maybe.
I guess if you're in a roto league, fine. But if you're in a head-to-head league, it's one of the same reasons I don't want Nurkic. If you're in a head-to-head league, I don't want to be drafting a player who might be losing minutes or losing a percentage of their role during the season. It's in a head-to-head league, Kristaps Porzingis has more value than he does in a roto league, because at some point, if you can't make the finals without your 10th round pick, your team isn't good enough to win the finals anyways. Now, granted, if you've already drafted Joel Embiid and Jimmy Butler, you're already using enough IR spot that you've taken yourself out of the Kristaps Porzingis sweepstakes, because you're not just sacrificing your 10th round pick for 10 months. You're also sacrificing an IR spot. You're sacrificing waiver flexibility. You're sacrificing a bunch of things. But
it's a massive swing. Taking those two guys is a massive swing.
So it's more complicated than just that. But if you're drafting young players, if you're drafting players with a history of health, and Kristaps, his ADP is in the 10th round, and you're in a head-to-head league, you should be reaching around, because that's better than you're going to get.
By the way, in Australia, the reach around is a whole different thing. And so just hearing you say that is just like, should we be reaching around Joel Embiid? Maybe, but
I think the last time I talked to, maybe it was Josh Lloyd as well. Anytime I talk to you folks down under, apparently a lot of my natural colloquialisms have very dirty implications for you guys.
I said, like, when you're at a disadvantage, right? When you're in the lead in a basketball game, if you're leading, you say, like, let's not like you still play from, like, you play like you're behind. Like you play from behind, like you always are still trying to increase your lead. You don't take the foot off the gas pedal.
Yeah.
I said that to someone the other day, and they're like, "Excuse me?" I'm like, "Play from behind. You got to play to win. You got to play to get the advantage back. Like you got to play like you're chasing a lead." And they're like, "I thought you were talking about something from my bum." I'm like, "No, no, not the same thing in basketball. It's very different. Sporting. Back on this list now.
Yeah.
Maybe people are just have dirty minds like that.
Dirty minds, I think.
I'm more curious now. Isaiah Hartenstein, I think that's an interesting one. I think all your other three are interesting. Take me through Jaren, Isaiah, and then OG.
So let's have this Hartenstein conversation first.
Okay.
First of all, let me start. I love Hartenstein. I'm a Hartenstein fan. Last year, across the 8 drafted leagues that I was in, I drafted Hartenstein in 6 of them. He was one of my 2 most drafted players. I am a fan of him. I'm a fan of his game. Hopefully that gives me some credibility here to say, what are you all doing drafting him at 60? You have sapped all of the value out of what is a really risky endeavor.
But does it make it a bust if you, but does it, hold it. So let's say if he finishes the season at 74, is that a bust if you're drafting him one round early to make sure you get a guy who could maybe be a 50 guy? Or do you think it can completely, this is where I think this is my argument for him. Because by the way, we're at 1 minute 23 left in the third, and we've just seen our first look of him. Again, not as a starting center. They played Chet as the starter today, and it's the preseason. And there's no Shea, and it's the preseason, and there's no Wemby, and fucking all of the preseason bullshit. 17 minutes, 4 points. Now, what was the shooting? 2 of 5. He took a 3. Fuck off, Isaiah. Don't go out there. You stay in, Isaiah. 8 rebounds, 7 assists, 1 steal, and 1 block shots. And the only thing there that I see that I love is his playmaking is so underrated. We spoke about him. Oh,
he's a
so
really good player. But here's the crux of my Hartenstein problem. Is the minutes. It's all about the minutes. And yes, he can be effective in limited minutes, but I feel like people are drafting him with the expectation that he is going to be playing starter or starter equivalent minutes. And
what would you say fair minutes in? So let's say starter minutes are what we can argue like 28 to 32. What would you see him being a value if I give you a number, it's 25, 26 minutes a night guaranteed for Hartenstein. Do you think 60 is still over, or do you think like the 70 mark is about the comp where we want to look at?
If you guaranteed 26 minutes, then I would say that punt points managers should be every team that looks at their roster through 5 rounds and says, yeah, I'm punting points, should be prioritizing Hartenstein with the next pick, but no one else should be.
Okay.
And so if you're punting points, then Hartenstein in the 60s, great. If you're not punting points, then Hartenstein in the 60s, still too much. And that's at 26 minutes per game. And I don't think he's going to get that much. Here's my reasoning on this.
Go.
Hartenstein is a very good player. The Thunder went and got a good player. They did not go out and say, we need to get bigger. They said, we need a good player, and preferably a big good player. If the Thunder were interested in fundamentally revamping their approach, the approach that earned them the number 1 seed in the West, the approach that earned them a multi-round playoff berth, if they were interested in revamping that, they would have spent a second free agency acquisition on someone who is 7 feet, 250 pounds.
Or giving up more draft capital to move down, because they have draft capital for days. They could have just gone out and got it.
They wouldn't have. They didn't look at their roster and say, we need to be bigger all as a matter of first principle. They said, we need a big player who is good. Here's one. But they acted like a team that still likes playing Chet at the 5 as much as possible, but needs a bruiser who can hold up against Gobert and who can hold up against Jokic and can hold up against Embiid if that's the matchup.
And Gafford and Lively, who ate away the rebounds on these. Gafford and Lively collectively.
I'm laughing, but actually, yes.
Because this is where they lost. They lost on the rebound count against the Mavericks, and if they had a Hartenstein, maybe this is different.
I'm laughing, but actually, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so they wanted a matchup-specific, high-quality big man. They didn't get bigger as a matter of first principle, which tells me that they still want Chet to be playing center with the overwhelming majority of his minutes, which means there's just a very limited amount of minutes for Hartenstein to be out there playing center, and Hartenstein is not a power forward, buddy. How does Hartenstein? How do you guarantee me 26 minutes if the primary goal is to have your second most important player playing center?
Man. I can't give you that. I want to guarantee. I want to just tell you it's going to be okay and hold your hand and give you a big hug and be like, I do, man. I just want to be like, hug you and be like, it's okay, man. He'll get his 26 years.
I want it too. I love Hartenstein.
I want it too. I love Hartenstein. Like, I love it. I have a Hartenstein, one may say. But it's, I want good things. I want good things for him. I want good things for him. And the minute
he's going to get a good thing. He's going to go to the Western Conference Finals and maybe deeper. He's going to win
the NBA championship. He's going to be
not going to justify.
He's going to be Boston. They're going to be.
He's
Boston.
just not going to justify a 55th pick in fantasy drafts, which is, I think, where he went in the draft I just took.
Oh my God, that's probably me. I went early on him a couple of times, but that's fine. I did a couple of points. I love him.
5'7". That's pretty early.
So round 5. So, but this is the thing. We also do know, and I think this is cultivating a situation where we've actually cultivated not a narrative, but I actually think we've cultivated the environments across fantasy platforms. I mentioned this to someone else the other day, that round 4, you see a couple of flirtations with maybe a center or two goes, but round 5 is like, okay, it's a round 5 and round 6. You see bigs move. Like, I know now, one of my draft strategies is be like, all right, if you're going to be taking them, and this is where people are complaining about picks 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm like, well, fine. Don't play the same game. Don't get sucked in because you've seen at the turn at the beginning of the like pick 1, 2, 4, and 6 all be centers, and you're like, holy shit. There's been 4 centers go off the board in the last 6 picks, and you're sitting there at pick 7. You feel like you need to get the next one. Well, maybe there are some other ones depending on the build you're wanting to look at later on. You've got your Livelies and your Gaffords to throw those guys out there. Al Horford is a great pick around 100-ish. Zubac, great pick around the 100-ish in the letters. You can maybe get some of these guys, later on where you don't have to invest that heavily.
And I mean, the other people, the others I mentioned on my list, like Nick Claxton, I think he's undervalued. I think Rudy Gobert is currently a little bit undervalued. I think Bam Adebayo is a little bit undervalued right now. Like, most of the people who, if you look at them and say, but what is he going to do to my free throw? Most of those guys right now, I think they're kind of undervalued. Not because of their free throw. It's just a coincidence that I think most of the people in that group, Mark Williams, I think most of those guys are kind of undervalued right now.
And he's undervalued because there's that injury concern with him. But then again, there's guys who are being maybe overvalued, or hopefully the things. Jaren Jackson Jr. is a bust, already injured again. OG Anunoby is one that I thought his game the other day, I know it was the preseason, but I liked seeing the guys, because I think New York went to make a statement after the Karl Anthony trade. This is where I get truth from preseason. I think this was a case where New York wanted to showcase Cat. They wanted to showcase their new look 5. They are driven just as much about ego, being in one of the biggest markets. Like, you're a Bostonian, you know what it's like to go up against the Knicks and the culture of Knicks. They played 12 minutes of real basketball the other night, and that was for their fans. It was lip service to be like, look, we got Mikal Bridges, we're putting Josh Hart in the starting 5, we got rid of Randall, a divisive topic within our culture. We brought in Karl Anthony Towns, worst kept secret for the last 4 years since Leon Rose took over at the Knicks. It's happened. Here's our team. We lost Hartenstein, but we're fine. This is us. And we saw OG play well in that starting power forward spot. And so for me, I think it's where he's going. I think he can be a bust if you draft him again now we're putting him into the 40s and the 50s. I've seen him fly from the 50s, maybe too high too soon. But Jaren Jackson Jr. is the curious one, because he was the second round guy that's dropped to the third round slightly because of Karl Anthony Towns. It's almost like in interchangeable pieces on the chessboard. Like, Karl Anthony Towns has gone up into like around the late 20s, early 22 to 28. And getting moved from that piece is Jaren Jackson Jr., and he's been put into the 30s somewhere. But you think there's a potential for Jaren Jackson Jr. to even be more of a bust?
So first of all, this is a player with a pretty with an injury history that I find a little bit dicey. Jaren Jackson, I worry about his health. But That said, you know, he's had some health for the last couple of years, so maybe that's a little bit unfair. But I think, you know, I think we see his defensive stats, which are obviously incredible, and get excited. And we see how much he was able to do last year when there was no Ja.
It was his team. He was the only real NBA player apart from Scottie Pippen Jr.
And I think that there's going to be a little bit more of a crash down to earth than necessarily some people are expecting. You know, this is a guy who I think he's a fourth round pick who's going in the second or third.
Correct.
I have drafted him in the one mock I was in where he fell to the fourth. Like, I'm not opposed to drafting Jaren if he falls.
You've hit that. So let's say that's 36, right? The magic number, let's say 12 team is 36, right?
Yeah.
So him going in 37, 38, 39 is where I think I took him at 38.
I think it was 4-2. So there is a point where I'm okay with it. It's just I think that people get a little over their skis about a guy who might only score 17, 18 points, isn't a particularly good rebounder, is a big man who doesn't really help you with your field goal percentage. He doesn't really hurt you with your free throw percentage, which is nice.
Doesn't buoy it extensively either.
Right. He's, you know, as a big man, he's functionally neutral there. But, you know, I think his 3-point shooting is a little overstated. Like, he does shoot threes, but in the modern NBA, the amount of threes that your team needs to shoot to win a head-to-head matchup, he's not really helping. Last year in the industry pickup league, the average threes per game per starter over the course of the season was 1.7. Jaren Jackson Jr. has averaged 1.6, 1.6, 1.5. But he averaged 1.8 last year as the number one option without Ja. So he's gets functionally neutral. So yeah, I mean, granted, functionally neutral from the center position, if you're putting him in center, okay, that does help. Functionally neutral from a shot blocker, not a combination you can always get. We're talking about using a fourth round pick on him. I am saying you can use a valuable pick on him, but I think that he just
we're not doing that in the second round justice.
It's not. He's not going to help you as much as Paul George. He's not going to help you as much as James Harden.
And his injury recently as well. This is a good thing, not for him. I don't wish bad things on him, but it's good because it's taken a little bit of
managers.
It's going to save some managers and taking out the air of arguments. In fact, he is one of the biggest downtrending players. Now, he was averaging prior to the injury, and this is up to date as well. So he was now at 31 on Fantrax. So inside of that buffer zone, like you said, he was at 33.9, basically 34 on Yahoo. So again, inside where we think he's safe at 36. He has crashed down incredibly, 2 red arrows down on ESPN to be 66. Now, that is tasty. Because that means his ADP has dropped down an incredible amount, and it's a very, very intriguing option in the 50s if he's going to be there.
Hamstring injuries, not great, but they are telling us hamstring injuries aren't great. Memphis, not the most trustworthy organization. 2 obvious cautions. But if you're telling me that I can get him in the 5th round, I will take someone with the upside of Jaren Jackson when they are screaming at us that he is going to play in the opener. They're saying it as forcefully as they can. This is precautionary. This is just the preseason. He will play in the opener. I understand.
Memphis hold him back. If they hold him back, man, and someone gets frustrated, send a trade.
Memphis I understand Memphis has done nothing to earn our trust over the years, but they are being pretty loud about this in a way that they don't have to be. They don't have to be so aggressive about he's going to play in the opener as they are. So hopefully it means literally something. And if I can get an extra round of value out of, you know, one of the best combination blocks and steals guys, then yeah, great. Happy to do that. But if he's still going in the second or third, then nope.
Don't want to touch it. Don't want to touch it. Don't want to taste it. We've argued those through. I'll give mine before we wrap up for the day. These are 5 guys that I want to say that are making my list. And we spoke about a couple of them by way. So this is where their average draft position right now with their availability. Anthony Edwards inside the first round is ludicrous. Get off your high horses. He's not that great.
Too high.
Like, too high. Like, I mean, like, he's great. He's great.
Second round, fine.
Second round, fine. No, second round, fine. Second round, fine. 13, 14, 15, great. I saw him go at 8 the other day. Listen to the pod I just did about this. Just watch the first 3 minutes of the Shea pod I did from pick 4. Chet Holmgren and Edwards both went in the first round. And this is where the Chet Holmgren experience is tied for me to your Isaiah Hartenstein experience. Because if there is going to be a timeshare, if there is going to be some minutes split between them when they do put Chet at the 2 and there is timeshare, he could invariably lose some value. The fact that we're seeing him fall into, now I'm not saying it's going to be a high amount of value, but the fact is that we've seen Chet Holmgren increase in value before seeing it rolled out is the thing which is concerning me, because I'm seeing him go very early in the second round. His average ADP right now on Yahoo has crept up to 16, and we're seeing him now flirt with the end of first round. Like, people are taking him at 11 or 20. We need to just remember this was a guy without Isaiah Hartenstein that last year, well, guess what? He finished around the 20th best player. 22 best player. Now we say, oh yeah, but he's going to get better. He's going to get better. Okay, but maybe there's a bit of a ding on that. Maybe he's not. So for the 20th best player to make their way into the first round, my bust for him is only seen and exclusively mutually tied to the fact that people trying to pick up Chet in the first round. We do not do that. But he is in the same Edwards conversation. We're not looking to do that in our drafts. If he falls late second round, great. Early third, sing praises, kumbayas, and hallelujahs. Fantastic.
He's not going to fall to the third.
He's not going to fall to the third. He's going to fall into the second, but if he falls late in the second, that's where I think we can get appropriate value. Miles Turner, a little bit of a buyer beware situation. We did see a bit of a regression last year, and people are moving into that, drafting him in the 4th round, 5th round. Blocks, we saw them dip last year slightly again. This is what we wanted Miles Turner for. And again, the allure of him is if Jaren Jackson Jr. is falling in your draft to the exact same place that Miles Turner is available, and I can stash him in IR, who do we take?
Jaren.
Exactly. Yeah, so why are we going to win? This isn't, but we're making it because his ADP is sticking. Like, we were going to take Turner. He's healthy. I want it. No, we don't do that. We're looking then to get someone like a Jaren Jackson Jr., especially with an IR spot. Like, that's incredibly tasty in our drafts, especially with like being a week and a half away from draft town. This is it. And then another guy that we're going to get down, Kobe White. There is a logjam at the guard position. We don't know how that's going to shape out. Lonzo Ball's coming back. Giddey is there. There is caution to be had on Kobe White, but he is someone who was starting to move up draft boards as a target, and now he is being aggressively drafted. We can't expect the same thing from him last year. That's unfair. Just like we can't expect Alex to. He's a great player. Oh, I love a Kobe White. I was high on him last year.
I like him.
He's fun. I like him. I don't think that we can draft him in the 70s. I don't think we can do that. No. I've seen him go in the 70s lately. I've seen him in the 70s and 80s. I'm like, what are we doing? Why are we? No. I'm like, wait, that's a trend. Let me go up to the RotoWire data for the most recent reports. He's trended up across the board. Here we go. Kobe White is 71. ESPN.
Please don't do that.
This is where I'm saying don't do that. Yahoo, thank God, he's dropped into 82, but still 80. I'm like, you know,
the slow draft I'm in, I was coin flip between him and whoever I took at 110.
There you go.
And I chose someone else.
This is.
But I strongly considered it, but that was much later.
And our ADP has dropped only slightly to 56 on ESPN. I don't know, ESPN manages what you're doing, but let's send out a caution for everyone else drafting yet still on ESPN that we're not going to touch Kobe White in that zone. And the Alex Sarr experiment. Now, look, I am okay with the late, but why I'm saying it's a bust is that there will always be invariably narratives and hype train. And we just did a bit of a taster on our, I'm going to put that probably as a Patreon exclusive, maybe throw it down the track about the preseason. But basically what we're saying is we can't get overhyped about a guy. And the number one thing that someone wants is an upside pick. And when we get these upside picks, we want to get them, we want to draft them, and we draft them aggressively. We are not drafting a Victor Wembanyama. We are not drafting a Chet Holmgren. We are not drafting two guys in rookie history to finish inside the top 20 players in fantasy. We cannot expect this of Sarr. We cannot expect a top 50 player. So to see him go in drafts or people be really excited and move him inside
the number you're about to tell me. What number? Where is his ADP right now?
Oh, Jesus. Let me see what it's going to in the last 24 hours. But I'm saying that people are going to start flirting with him around pick 100. And I still think that is way too high. They're going to get right into that zone. And I can tell you now, here we go. So Sarr, of all of the Washington players, has moved up. So he's gone down. He's 139 right now. And he's gone up in the last ones that I've done to be now taken in Yahoo leagues in the 10th and 11th round. Now that's around the 120s. So he's moved from being that last round, second last guy to be, and I can see if he has another couple of solid games, Alex. This is just something that we do. It's observational. It's anecdotal. Where do we take these rookies? Well, I'm going to take them around the 100s. I'm going to start getting them after 100. And then we take the quote unquote best rookie and like 107, 108. And I just don't see it there for him yet.
So I generally speaking, I am pro rookies in the 10th round or later. And I
120.
like,
so 120 after is fine.
As just like drafting principle, I think that is something that you should do. I think that between rounds 7 and 10, people are probably undervaluing veterans, and between round 10, they're undervaluing veterans and rookies, and rounds 11 and later, you're probably going to drop this guy anyways. The upside might be worth it. And especially this year when the rookie class is who knows what. That said, Sarr's just not the one I'd want. If I'm drafting a rookie there, I do want Edie, and I think he's available at the same spot.
He's just been playing. He's been playing with. Yeah,
they've just been playing their first technically game. A little bit higher. His ADP is a little bit higher. It looks like. So maybe this isn't a 1-to-1 comparison. But if Sarr is rising to the point where you're looking at him versus Edie, I would rather Edie.
Edie's my guy. He's my rookie of the year. He's like my dude who I just want good things for in this world. I want good things for Zach Edey.
The other rookie, especially in like 14 teamers that I'm looking at, is Buzelis.
The booze.
Yeah. I'm looking at him in like round 13 or 14 of a 14er or a deeper league. I'm like, all right.
You know what a booze bus is? Do you know what a booze bus is over in Boston? What a booze bus? You would have them. You know where police set up road patrols to the side of the road? We have ones here in Australia called a booze bus. There's this thing where they set up a booze bus where like there's a big police vehicle and a few other little squad cars, and they usher you in. And so I call Buzelis the booze bus. So yeah, this is my guy. I love Buzelis in Chicago.
I wouldn't be surprised if he has fantasy value, or if we drop him for someone else. And the other one who I'm drafting, we mentioned already in deeper leagues, is Missy. In deeper leagues, although if he really continues to look just lost out there, then that will sap a lot of that. One of the few situations in preseason that we might actually pay attention to is, does Missy look lost, or does he look like capable? If he looks capable, the center depth chart is so weak there that I would look at him. I would look at him in deep leagues as well.
And he'll be a guy that you probably, if he isn't, you'll probably be able to stream because of injuries or pull up during the course of the year, much like a Bub Carrington. Love what can come out of Bub Carrington in Washington. If there's an opportunity, if there's minutes, otherwise we pick him up, we see what it is, and we drop it, because we all know that we're going to hit the waiver wire hard. We're going to get these guys who bust out, but we don't want to overinvest in picks. Alex, thank you so much. And thank you big to our sponsors, The Standard Squeeze. I have their fine apparel on my head. If you, I sipped from my coffee cup earlier. That was from their 4-in-1. Use promo code IFS15 for 15% off your order. We'll catch up with Alex very soon again and lead up to the preseason and all things fantasy. Make sure you like and subscribe to All Things Inside. I am at NBA GWiz and Rikleen at Rikleen, Rikleen. Any final words for the preseason, Alex?
Say hi.
Say hi. Get on. At him. He loves it. He loves a cheeky at. You take care, everyone. We'll see you soon.